With the canal, you've got a long, narrow body of water, and depending what it's connected to, maybe it comes from a river system, there's going to be some sort of flow there, and then you have to allow for that flow. I've set up here basically about 250 meters upstream, so I'm going to call it upstream, from a lock system, when the lock systems are used obviously to let the boats go through there. And it's a nice, smooth, stable stretch. Because of the number of boats that are working on this particular canal, you don't get a lot of weed there. Very, very limited marginal weed. It's clear, it's just up and down, used for the boats, and it's up to you to get the fish. Now, majority of the fish, I would think, is my suggestion, are from the centre to the far side, maybe 3/4 of the way over, because all canals are going to be deeper in the middle than they are in the edges. Now, first off, for float fishing, I'm firing in some maggots there. Going to send out some loose feed on canals. I've never found it doing much good unless I'm pre-baiting, let's say for the start of the season, then maybe you can put on a ground bait in. You're far more likely to catch if you just catapult 1/2 to 3/4 away across to the other side. I feel if fish are going to be disturbed, they're going to be disturbed on the near side towpath bank where people are walking. For the ground bait mix, I'm using, I call it Bailey's number 1. It's just a regular cereal feed for horses. It's dead easy. There's no perfume smells or nothing in it. You can always put your own additives in there. Actually, if you're going for bream, a good tip is to get some of that Scopex. We used to use it 30-40 years ago, and just make small feeder size, because I'm going to be fishing the float, the Wagler float versus the feeder. So I'm trying to make little balls of ground bait that are the same size or similar to a small open-ended feeder which I'm going to use. And that hopefully might draw the fish in at different levels across the river. And throw them in different patches. Do not squeeze it too hard. Okay, here's the maggots. Now, in the summer these are going to turn into what we call casters. It's just a natural process of turning into a fly, which is obviously where the maggots come from. In one corner of the bait box you can see nice, fresh, wriggling maggots. I've got red, I've got white, and with the big perch that are known to be in this particular canal, I always like to have a few red maggots in there. For fish like skimmers and bream, the casters, as you can see, they slow up, and you can use them really for pretty much anything. I like to keep my worms in not a plastic container, because those black plastic containers tend to heat up, but I put them into a jam jar with holes punched in the lid, old school style, some damp moss in there. Do not damp the moss with tap water because it's got chlorine in it, it might kill the worms. Use rainwater or pond water if you have to damp it down, and keep them cool. Okay, as you can see, I'm going to be using a straight, not a bodied Wagler. It is attached top and bottom with a locking shot, the bulk of the shot underneath the float, and then you can have a hook link just there where my finger is. That's 5-pound line going down to a hook link of maybe say 3-pound line. I've got one BB shot about 12 to 15 inches away from the bait, which in this case is 3 red maggots. And when you're casting with a Wagler, always let that bottom bait swing away from you carefully, just loosely like this, up behind your back of your head. Watch any overhanging trees, cast it out, and then sink the rod top a couple of turns on the reel just to barely sink the line, and then place it in the rest. Now here's a tip. I like to leave my reels when I'm float fishing and feeder fishing on backwind. Now the weight of the handle alone, as you can see here, will make that spool turn. So allow for that. Then if you do get a big fish grab hold while you just happen to be looking the other way, the rod doesn't disappear in. I also tighten up the loose spools of line so it's nice and tight to the float. That way I can always glance at the feeder, and should I get a big fish grab hold, the rod hopefully won't get pulled in. It's what we call a churner.
That's the setup I've been using with the rod, reel, float. You got all that. I'm down here just upstream from the lock and set up here all ready to go, see what I can catch. Might get lucky with the bigger perch, who knows. I'm going to stick with those lobworms, the feeder, and the bigger bait. It's always worth throwing it out to the side. I've got it on the buzzer, and then I'm going to work the middle of the channel here, which is the part that's actually sort of cut out really by the boat movement, and trust me, there's plenty of boat movement up and down here. Now, one of the things you do get here is you'll get a sideways surge, backwards and forwards, okay, up and down here, and I couldn't really work out what it was. Previously on a canal up my way, which is pretty rubbish for fishing, I have to say, that's why I've driven 80 miles or so to get away from it and get some decent fishing, is a surge you get from the displacement of water pushed by one of the barges, you know, when they come along. But here I thought it was accentuated, it's almost like a mini tsunami. And then I realised it's because I'm close to the lock down there that you get a lot of suction when a boat goes into the lock. It's drawing all this water from the canal, and that's why it's going to the right so much. And equally, when they lock it off, there's a back swell comes back and brings all the rubbish up. And I've noticed, you know, that I have been picking up some bits and pieces on the float. So this is where I'm set up, just down here like this. All a bit Heath Robinson, but hey ho, that's the way it is. A totally awesome show. So what I'm doing, you have to put up with that guy mowing the lawn. He hasn't stopped mowing it for hours. I should think it's like a billiard table. Is I've got a barge here which you would normally be drop shotting across, trying to catch some perch around the front of, but I don't think it's been moored there that long. It's not like it's been there a long time, because we were here, well, 10 days ago. It wasn't there then. That one, on the other hand, has been there some time. That's obviously belongs to the people who's moored there. So there's a good chance that there could be a big perch under that. And I'm firing the feeder loaded with ground bait, just small pellet sized ground bait, open-ended feeder down there. The feeder gives me some casting weight. It also gives me a bit of feed around the lobworm, which I'm putting out there. So that can almost fish for itself on the buzzer down here. Meanwhile, I can work the float rod out in the centre here. And I should, if I keep feeding double red maggots. I don't feed double red maggots. I feed single maggots, and I put double red maggots on the hook. Been in the sun too long. Anyway, I'm going to concentrate on float fishing out the middle there. Going to have to put up with the boats up and down. It's the way it is on a canal, and see if we can't get some fish on that rig I showed you.
When you cast a Wagler float, always allow for it to swing behind you. Cast out, but try and feather and stop it just before the float hits the water. That makes the bait go past the float. It doesn't tangle. Here's the running ledger rig I'm using. Open-ended swim feeder, a regular worm there. Snap off the tip, both ends. If you snap both ends off the worm, that enables a lot of juice to come out of the water, and then you go down to your feeder. So I put the worm on first, then the feeder. I've got a good mix of bait there. Now when you're filling these feeders, they can be cage feeders, or they can be what we call, as I'm using here, like a plastic open-ended feeder. Do not pack it in and force it with your fingers too hard. You just want ground bait that is barely damped. All you just want to, if you wet it too much, it's going to fly out both ends. If you squeeze it too hard, it's going to compact. It will never come out. And don't forget, there's no river here, there's no current flow to empty that feeder for you. What you throw out will generally, unless you know, if you leave it static, it's going to stay there and barely trickle out. But you can, of course, bump it now and then with the rod top, and that will trickle the bait out around your hook bait. That's what you want. I'm casting the swim feeder way down towards that second boat in the distance. Then I'm going to put it down into a buzzer. So I'm fishing two rods. So I've got the float on the left rod, which I can work with the current there because it's going down, and I've got the feeder on the right rod. And it looks like here, first blood comes to the float rod. Now, of course, I'm operating the float rod all the time. That's what I'm working as I'm going down. And because I've got a buzzer, I can just glance down at the little bobbin or listen to the buzzer. It's just a bonus way of fishing rather than fishing. You can't really fish two float rods, although you could fish two feeder rods. There we go, a nice canal, small bream, and that's what probably you're going to catch. Is going to be small perch, small bream, who knows, some roach, maybe some rudd, depending how good a quality the fishing is on your particular canal. Look, okay, it's not a giant fish, but most people, especially youngsters, will be grateful to catch something. A nice little bream there, and this is what I'm doing to get them. just nicking on the red maggots. Now I'm nicking these through the fat end. Some matchman I know put the thin end on, but I put the fat end on thinking it's going to do more wriggling around, because it must be harder if you hook it through the thin end. It's got that huge body weight of the maggot to move around. Whereas if you hook it through the fat end, the small end, which I call the feeding end, is more likely to wiggle around. And as you can see there, you've got the added bonus of movement, which the fish just might see, and it just might throw that switch. Here we go. Watch me get this small perch in, but don't take your eyes off the bobbin down on the right hand corner of the picture. I'm swinging in, watch that bobbin on the right, here it goes. I'm about to get another fish on the ledger rod. Okay, small perch, watch the bobbin, there it goes. Beeper's going, fish on. There you go, so it just shows you've got the chance of getting two fish at once. I'm casting long distance, 3/4 away, just to the upstream side of that barge, in the hope that any fish underneath it will come out. This is a setup. I have the buzzer. I have a piece of plastic spine notebook there for my very ultralight bobbin, as you can see. That's all I have there. So I've got the buzzer and I've got the bobbin, visual and audio. Meanwhile, although that's fishing on the right, I can work away with the float and continue to catch, hopefully, fish after fish, and keep myself amused.
Well, Nathan thought he was going home, no chance. He got to that gate back there, and then my buzzer went off, and I've got to get him to get. He's got a really spanking perch here. If you have a look at this one, hopefully he doesn't come off, and that's what I came to the canal for. He's trying to go home to get his carp gear, and I thought, no, do you know what? Look at that perch.
Nice perch.
Get in, my boy. Lovely job, lovely job. Oh, great. Let me get him up, and let me get my mat. Cool, if I can get a picture of you, just hold him up to the camera and talk about the perch and stuff.
About the average size for Hungerford, really.
Yeah, it's a nice fish, look.
It is a nice perch.
There he is. So these fish, obviously that one looks like he's been through the wars a bit.
He looks a bit of an old warrior, that one.
He does, doesn't he? Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm grateful for it anyway.
But yeah, so am I actually.
Yeah. You only come down to see what it's like. You've had a decent skimmer and a perch already.
Yeah, look at that.
Oh, I'll pop him in the net, hopefully it'll be alright.
Yeah.
Brilliant, lovely job, thank you.
As I'm casting out there, on the right, watch the bobbin. It's going up, strike it, Graeme. Yes, fish on. And there's the back wind. You might have just seen the back wind of the reel go. So I was literally using the float rod as I cast out. The buzzer and the bobbin gave me both audio and visual identification. I got a bite, I could just reach down, pick it up. Now this being on the worm and the feeder out from that barge, I was hoping fish would come out from underneath that barge. It appears they may have. What is it? Yes sirree, it's target species achieved. It's a really nice big perch. And that's what this canal is famous for. That's really what I was going. Amusement with the float and the waggler, lots of numbers of fish, but the bigger fish come into that feeder and worm thrown over near that barge. What a cracking perch that one is.
And that shows you what it's like canal fishing on the waggler float. Nice little skimmers, second big perch, and it's not over yet. What a cracking fish. Fish on, people. I wasn't even watching. Another nice skimmer. Seem to be coming on double red maggots, and the perch on the worm. There we go. Now you can come on a canal and you can catch nothing, or you can use these tactics and then just catch fish like this. Double red maggots right in the top lip there. They should come on the feed more and more now. Fingers crossed. There might even be another perch around. Guys, different fish this time. Beep on the right hand rod. Could be something, could be rubbish. This one looks like a roach, and that's the first roach I've had on this canal. I don't think that's a hybrid. You guys check it out. I think that's a proper roach, that one. And just looking down the canal, oh dear, one of the G&T set hasn't tied his boat up yet, and he's chuntering down towards the carp guys, and then me. This could be the last fish. If it is, at least you got some tips on fishing the canal. Shows you can get a bit of sport there, just letting that Wagler float drift through. Get yourself these disgorgers, kids, really handy. What you do is pop them behind your ear, and there you go, nice little roach. Hope you enjoyed it. Keep watching the Totally Awesome Fishing Show. Is it over yet? Am I going home? Not yet. Well folks, as you can see, it's stilled off beautifully now. The boats have all got to go and tie up now. They finished all that travelling about business, and they're going to have their tea and cakes and gin and tonics and stuff like that. So they're basically tied up, which is all good news. The water's gone a bit clearer. It's stilled off. There's a lot of wind coming in tomorrow, so this is a one-shot deal I've got. But just look at this, for float fishing on a canal. What a setting. Well, there's a different one, guys. I haven't had one of these for years. This looks like a perch, but that in fact is a ruffe. R-U-F-F-E. And I can't tell you how many years it is since I caught one of these guys. On a worm, just after that boat went through. So I'm going to call that boat the Rough Boat. Look at that chap, and he got some spines on him, look. Bigger, I think actually a bigger fin there than a perch. Pretty little chap, but that is a rough. They used to call it a Tommy Rough years ago. But that's a rough. It must be 30 years since I've caught one of those. I'm not even going to put him in the keep net. He's going to go straight back. I believe that's a British rarity nowadays.
Now, I couldn't resist it. I've been baiting that swim and catching lots of skimmers. There's absolutely no reason at all why there couldn't be a big predatory perch over there feeding on those skimmers and small roach, or even a pike. I don't think it's renowned as a big pike water, this particular canal, but you can get some out of it, no question, because we've done a pike film down there as well. So using this plug here, look what I find along in the margins, a dead pike. Now, it doesn't die and then jump and throw itself up on the bank like that, does it? And there appears to be no bite marks from an otter, so I can only assume some angler has caught that, killed it and throw it in the rushes. What a waste. At least if I throw it back in it will break down, it won't upset Joe Public, but what a waste of a good fish.
Just look here, I've got no torch, some of the size of these perch. Absolute animal perch. Load of skimmers there. Really big old boy perch. Look at this one. Look at that one. What a brace of perch. And I hear my buzzer going in the background. I'm still getting skimmers out of this net to show you.